There are some things about Wichita you may expect everyone to know about. For example, knowing that Wichita was a cow town and a stop along the Chisholm Trail, Texas cattle drive. Now, knowing that, you still may not be familiar with this in plain sight Chisholm Trail historical marker while driving past it regularly at Douglas and McLean. The historical marker placed in 1941 by Kansas veterans of the Spanish-American War. That's just one of 84 stories Wichita journalist and author Vanessa Whiteside writes about in her book, Secret Wichita, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure. I interviewed Whiteside at the PBS Kansas station because one of her stories is about the Bonavia Foundation PBS Kansas Museum she titles The Small Screen. It fits the book's obscure label because the free-to-the-public museum is so new, many likely don't know about it. She poses the question, could it be the city's smallest museum? Now, talk about weird, wonderful, and obscure. Whiteside asks, why is a robot buried underground on the Wichita State University campus? This, the Celestial Mechanic, was dedicated in 2019.
But this is much smaller, and it's only emerging from the ground a few inches. So you could miss it if you walk by. And there have been people that said, well, I was an engineering student, or I've been on campus recently and I've never noticed it. It's there.
One might be surprised to see what they can learn at a cemetery.
So it may not be everyone's first thought to learn about their city or their town's history by walking a cemetery, but there's a lot to learn.
A lot to learn, she says, including about two of Wichita's founders buried in North Hillside cemeteries, one in the Maple Grove Cemetery on the east side of Hillside, the other in the Highlands Cemetery on the west side.
James R. Mead, one of our founding fathers, is buried over there, and his mausoleum has a very interesting aesthetic. You think if you could read about more about why he decided to make it look like an Egyptian design, I tell that story in the book.
She also writes of the original Buffalo Bill, William Mathewson. He is one of Wichita's founders along with Meade and others. His monument in Highlands Cemetery, which is on the west side of Hillside. Wichita's Chisholm Creek Park is a popular spot for outdoor enthusiasts. But you do have to look for this tree tunnel. It's off the paved pathways.
So it's an unmarked natural tunnel. The trees formed on their own that way. And it's another one of those things. It's a little bit obscure. If you're on the actual concrete path or the paved pathway that goes through the park at that area, you may miss it. Just keep your eyes peeled, and once you realize where it's at, the directions are in the book. You'll certainly most want to take a detour and go through the path.
Now, Secret Wichita highlights several of the plain in-sight landmarks, such as the Keeper of the Plains. The author says she takes a deeper dive into those subjects for the readers. Whiteside says she considered 3 different readers of the book. 1, the new transplant to Wichita. Secondly, those who have lived here for a long time. And thirdly, someone who's never been to Wichita.
She was an Oscar-winning actress, and she's from Wichita.
This historical marker at 925 North Wichita Street honors the Wichita-born movie legend Hattie McDaniel. McDaniel was the first African-American actor to win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in the 1939 film Gone with the Wind. Younger generations might not be as familiar with McDaniel because she acted from the 1920s to the early 1950s. McDaniel, born in Wichita in 1893. The family lived near 9th and Waco Avenue before moving to Denver when Hattie was 7.
So I grew up here and knew nothing of it. And I don't think any of my friends knew anything about it. There's people that have picked up the book and thumbed through it, and they said they didn't know anything about it.
The book directs the reader to Central Riverside Park, to these 14-foot limestone rocks.
So some people call it Wichita's mini Stonehenge, but it's actually a solar calendar.
These were placed here in 2003.
Not only is this a tile mosaic art installation of some sort, there's a purpose to this. So the blue stone, when the sun hits it at a perfect time of day, reflects onto another stone, and all of it tells us about what's happening with the weather, what season it is, based on the movement of this light.
Whiteside points out a museum many may be blown away with, so to speak. It's the House of Tank Museum. This museum opened in 2020.
So tanks ranging from World War I to more modern day tanks from Russia, Germany, the US used them. There was one that is a replica of a Sherman tank, and it's a replica from the movie Fury, which starred Brad Pitt. So a lot of people like to go look at that one, take their picture with it.
Being a self-guided museum means those with a casual interest may quickly get through it, while the person with a keen interest in tanks might take all day here. Now, if you've driven on Commerce Street in the Art District just south of Intrust Bank Arena, this site may have given you pause to think. It's called Railgrass.
And it's kind of hidden. I mean, that's why I consider it obscure. Especially if it's daytime, you may not even notice that it's there.
And after sunset, these curved rails light up. The old railroad tracks are bent to resemble prairie grass blowing in the wind.
Because I don't want you to keep walking past these things in the community and taking them for granted, because there's people that made our city what it is. That's why I'm taking you to their gravesites or to a museum to look at an artifact or a historical marker that tells more about them.
There's a little bit of everything about Wichita people, places, and things in Secret Wichita. Places such as the building the spice merchant has occupied for years at Douglas and Cleveland. A century ago, this is where Mr. A.A. Hyde developed and manufactured mentholatum. The reader can learn from the individual stories about interesting characters like Carrie Nation and why she's holding a hatchet in this statue in front of the former Eaton Hotel. Author Whiteside hopes readers will learn more by using the book as a tour guide and visiting the featured sites. For Positively Kansas, this is Chris Frank reporting.